Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of New Zealand, I also acknowledge the head of UNDRR Pacific Regional Office, fellow DRR partners, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, Nisambul Winaksak. It is indeed a great pleasure to witness all of you join us in numbers here today to commemorate this year's National Disaster Awareness Week celebrations. Tuesday this week marked the start of the cyclone season in the South Pacific region, a period now defined by record-smashing superstorms that can erase years of development progress in a matter of hours. The 2019 Human Costs of Disaster report released by the UNDRR states that between 2000 and 2019, more than 7,000 major disasters have impacted all regions of the world, claiming 1.2 million lives and directly affecting 4.2 billion people, with economic losses estimated at US $3 trillion. These numbers in itself demonstrates the importance of promoting a greater understanding of disaster risk and stresses, the need for an all-of-society approach so that appropriate measures can be developed together and shared extensively to protect the lives of our most vulnerable citizens. Disasters and climate risks, as we all know, are transformed across nations as a result of our geographical interconnectedness. For instance, due to our close proximity to Tonga, Fiji also felt the tremors and experienced coastal inundation as a result of the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcanic eruption. And given our vulnerability and the increasing and intensifying impacts of climate change on our small island nation, we can only expect storms to become more severe in the years to come. Therefore, the urgency to be prepared is strongly needed more than ever. That is what today is all about. A solemn reminder of the duty of care we hold to ourselves and our communities. It is our opportunity to reflect on the lessons of past tragedies and a time to educate ourselves and prepare our nation better for future storms brewing beyond the horizon. And we are indeed thankful that the Talatala was one of the victims of Cyclone Winston that hit us in 2016. And he's here to testify of the dangers and the challenges faced by families who come in the path of cyclones and of course for other disasters as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Disaster Awareness Week is truly the essence behind all these efforts. Every year, the National Disaster Management Office conducts the National Disaster Awareness Week with the sole purpose of educating the general public on key life-saving messages on how to better prepare yourselves, your families, and your communities during the cyclone season. This platform provides us the opportunity to work together, share experiences, and promote an all-of-society approach as we move into the cyclone season. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme for this year's Disaster Awareness Week is early warning, early action for all. It is focused on Target G of the Sendai framework, that is, substantially increase the availability of and access to multi-hazard early warning systems and disaster risk information and assessments to people by 2030. We all would agree that effective early warning has proven to save both lives and properties. The 2022-2023 tropical cyclone season outlook released by the Fiji Meteorological Services has forecasted that 2 to 3 tropical cyclones are likely to pass through Fiji's exclusive economic zone this season. While the use of such early warning information will be central to the preparation and planning of early action by individual households and communities, the onus is now on us as individuals to ensure that we adhere to advisories and early warnings issued by authorities to ensure no lives or properties are lost in future disasters. Fijian communities have been on the front lines of the rising seas and stronger storms for decades. We do not have to learn about these intense climatic events through textbooks because we live through these daily. Our experiences have shaped us to become more resilient and stronger people. We must continue to showcase this spirit of resiliency as we head into the 2022-2023 cyclone season. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 6 months, the Fiji Meteorological Service has advised that we should anticipate above average rainfall due to the La Nina event we are currently experiencing this season. These indicators act as early warning messages for all members of the public residing in low-lying or flood-prone areas to ensure they are always prepared early. It is important to note that in Fiji, flooding continues to be one of the leading causes of death during any cyclonic event. According to the Fiji Police Force, between the years 2017 and August of 2021, a total of 17 people had drowned during an event of a natural disaster, and majority of these incidents involved people being swept away by strong currents while trying to cross flooded rivers, creeks, and areas. We must work collectively together to ensure these numbers do not rise. While we continue to advocate on the importance of early preparedness, as responsible citizens, we must also start taking the necessary actions to safeguard our families, livestock, and properties from such events. Fiji is helping flip the narrative around, working with vulnerable communities. Good governance recognizes that risk management is a two-way exchange and promotes the need to pool resources together so that our vulnerable or poor communities are not marginalized, and it leaves no room to leave anyone behind. For this reason, this year the government through the ministry is leading a whole of government and society approach in a week-long cleanup campaign commencing from November 7th to the 11th in the Central Division. This initiative will target 6 sites within the Central Division, namely Wailea in Suva, Nandunuma in Lami, Nabu Town, Waindamundamu in Nakasi, Nanduru Road in Nosori, and Korobo Town in Tailebu. In recent years, incidences of flooding in many low-lying and flood-prone areas have been a result of poor waste disposal by communities. Through this exercise, we hope to educate the communities and also raise awareness on the importance of ensuring the proper disposal of waste in your homes and in your respective communities. During this campaign, waste bins will be positioned at allocated sites, and on the day of collection, officials will be on the ground to not only raise awareness to the communities on proper waste disposal, but they will also use this opportunity to educate the public on the importance of early preparedness. I urge members of the public residing in the 6 areas identified in the Central Division to be part of this national effort. You can play your part simply by clearing your drainage system at home, disposing waste properly, and trimming tree branches around your compounds. Remember, these small acts can make a huge difference if we all work together. Before I conclude today, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Ministry of Education for partnering with us by allowing some of our children from nearby schools to be part of this program. I am hopeful that you all will learn something new today and impart this knowledge with your families and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, in achieving behavioral change towards reducing the social and economic impacts of disasters on our population, we must start young. And while government does its part, I urge the general public to equally contribute and play their role as responsible citizens. With the cyclone season now upon us, let us all work together to ensure that we are all prepared. With that being said, I now also officially launch the National Disaster Awareness Week campaign and the Fiji-wide National Cleanup Campaign. And thank you.
Honourable Minister, my dear colleague and fellow New Zealander Gabby, the Director of NDAW and the Commissioner of the Central Division and Permanent Secretary, and everybody here today. Nisambola Vanaka, Namaste, Namihinui Kekoto. Thank you very much for having us. So I come from a small community in Wellington, New Zealand. And what makes my heart glad today is to see you taking action as a community and standing together, and to see these sorts of events happen at a community level as well as a national level. So the Minister has outlined the scale of the challenge. It is no surprise to anybody here today or to anybody watching online that the Pacific Islands are incredibly vulnerable to extreme weather events. I include New Zealand in that calculation and Fiji in that calculation as well. People who live in this region are 3 to 4 times more vulnerable than others living in other parts of the Asia-Pacific region. And as we all know, and has been often mentioned in this context, the Pacific and Fiji sit at the front line of the climate crisis, and that makes the challenge harder. But I would say it makes the people more resilient as well. And so if we look about the theme of today and on the theme of this week, early warning and early action, science gives us some advantages. When I first started working in disaster risk reduction, or first started working in early cyclone season planning, was about 15 years ago in my career. And I remember travelling to the Fiji Met Office based at Nandi Airport as part of that work, and talking about the information that we had in advance of the cyclone season and the partnership between New Zealand's Met Service and Fiji's Met Service on how we could scan the horizon and see what we expected over the next 3 months. The information that we have available today, as the Minister has outlined and the Director of NDAW has publicised, is so vastly improved from where it was 15 years ago in terms of forecasting abilities. So we now have, with some degree of sort of inevitable confidence, a sense of what might come around the corner. And so our early warning systems are starting to kick in, and that gives us an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to collaborate on the science that will inform good decision making, but it gives us an opportunity to build strong partnerships, not just at the national and the regional level, but at the community level. And if I reflect on the things that make a real tangible difference as we prepare for cyclone season and we prepare for other disasters. I come from a country that has a lot of earthquakes, and we do a lot of preparing for earthquakes. It is that ability to take early action, so that as a household, as a village, as a community, you're working together before a disaster ever happens. And I think all of us on the stage would like to say we'll reach the point where disasters never happen. But as the logo on the shirt and on the top of the tent tells us, disasters do happen. So we need to be prepared for them. And the way that we prepare dictates how we will step through that crisis. The Minister talked about the extraordinary financial cost of disasters in this region. But the other side of that statistic is a calculation done by UNDDR that an investment of about 800 million in early warning systems would help developing countries avoid losses of $3 billion to $16 billion per year. So $800 million may sound like a lot of money, but it's nothing compared to the cost that comes afterwards. So The Director of NDAW mentioned that New Zealand has long been a partner of this event, and it's because we have a shared sense of vulnerability and we have some shared challenges, but it is also because we appreciate that in order to take early action, in order to get well prepared, you have to sort of see, feel and touch and work together as a community to identify your own hazards, what is specific to about where you live, what are the specific triggers, where is the specific cleanup that might be required, where is the communications testing that you might want to do. It acknowledges that the more time you spend talking about what may happen and preparing for what may happen, the better you are able to actually lift into responding if and when something does happen. And so I do want this morning to take time to acknowledge all of the members of the NDAW team who are all wearing these amazing shirts. I'm proud to wear a shirt alongside them because I know the work that they do, and I know how hard they work, and I acknowledge that they do this work when their own families and their own communities are affected, but they do it for all of Fiji. So allow me this morning to pay tribute directed to your team as you prepare for the next season. I also, like the Minister, want to spend just a brief moment at the end addressing this group of people over here. So as I said, I come from a country where we have a lot of earthquakes, and we have endless government campaigns about being well prepared for earthquakes. But it wasn't really until my children came home from school and said, we had an event with Civil Defence today that was called Get Through, show us where our emergency kit is, show us where we would go in the event of an emergency, let's make a family plan, that my husband and I really thought, oh, okay, we really need to do this because the children are demanding it of us. So my invitation and my challenge to all of the students here today is go home and talk to your families and your communities and ask them what they are doing to get ready, be part of the process, be part of the cleanup challenges, take pride and take leadership in helping to prepare. Minaka Bakalebu, I wish everyone the best for the week, and thank you very much for having us here today.
On behalf of the UN Resident Coordinator and on behalf of the UN system, thank you very much for inviting the United Nations to be part of this very, very important event and to kickstart Disaster Awareness Week here in Fiji. I mean, honestly, there's not much more I can really add to the wonderful remarks that have already been said by the Minister and the Ambassador, who have so eloquently and articulately summed up those key messages and calls to action on what we can do around disaster risk reduction and preparedness in Fiji. And I think it would seem very hard on a beautiful day like this, when the sun is shining, to think that we are actually at the start of cyclone season here in Fiji, and that we've heard that we are expecting 2 to 3 cyclone events this year, as well as more flooding and higher than average rainfall. And I know it can be really overwhelming, particularly for our students. They're hearing all of these messages all the time around climate change and the impacts. We're just coming out of COVID, and it seems really overwhelming. What can we do about this? How can we stop these big global events? But I think we have heard that actually disaster risk reduction is all about the actions that we can take, all of the preparedness actions we can take before an event to make sure we know what to do and actions that we can take to reduce disaster risk. So we've heard about some of those actions today around like getting behind this cleanup campaign that will really make a real impact in terms of flooding. And I think the Ambassador has put a call to action to all of you here. Go home after this. Talk to your mum and dad, talk to your grandparents and your wider family and your communities, and ask how are we prepared for this cyclone season. It's things like that that can make a real difference. So, and I'd also like to thank Fiji for all their continued efforts in this regard, for awareness raising, for bringing all the different stakeholders together as we see today. It's, you know, by working together, it's about knowing what to do, as I said, that will make this difference. So as we've heard, this year's theme for the Disaster Awareness and the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction is on Target G of the Sendai Framework. And the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is a global roadmap that governments and stakeholders all over the world signed up to in 2015. It runs to 2030, and it provides a roadmap for how we can collectively work together to reduce disaster risk. It has 7 key targets, and this year we're looking at the 7th of those 7 targets on early warning, early action for all. So in times of emergency, survival is the most basic of our human instincts, yet millions of people globally cannot survive because of a lack of an ample warning system. And in fact, as of today, 1/3 of the world's population, mainly in least developed countries and also small island developing states, including here in our own region in the Fiji, are still not covered by adequate disaster warning systems. And this is really unacceptable, especially because we all know that early warning and early action saves lives. And as we've heard, they don't only save lives, but they also save a lot of money as well. So I would like to call on all countries across the Pacific to implement Target G of the Sendai framework by increasing access to multi-hazard, people-centred, end-to-end early warning systems. And that people-centred and that end-to-end, that kind of jargon means it's not just about the warning, it's not just about the technology, but people know what actions they need to take and that they act on them as well. And this was really clear messages that came out of a conference that was held recently in September, which was co-hosted by the United Nations and the Government of Australia, called the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. It was also a key message that came out of the Fiji-hosted inaugural Pacific Disaster Risk Management meeting that was held in Nadi in September as well. And the key commitment from our political leaders was the need to step up and scale up investment in early warning, early action for all. And this also resonates with the call by the UN Secretary General globally and a commitment that has been made that in the next 5 years, every person across this planet will be protected by an early warning system. We've heard a lot about the importance of a whole of government approach, and it's really great to see here a lot of different agencies from across government coming together to talk about how they can collaborate in times of disasters. So this is really world-class examples. And it's not only governments that need to be involved, it's our CSO partners, our development partners, our academic institutions, our scientists, and most importantly, communities themselves. So again, it's wonderful to see this really active engagement. And when we were thinking about designing and implementing our early warning systems, it is that we really need to bring everyone around the table. And it's really critical that we're thinking about some of the most at-risk communities as well. So we have to think about people with disabilities, our young people, our elderly, women. How are they involved in the initial design, planning, and also rollout of our early warning systems? And finally, as we have seen time and time again, and this has been talked about earlier, that local knowledge is indispensable. You are the experts in this area. You have faced countless cyclones and flooding events. So how do we apply this local and Indigenous knowledge into our systems as well? It all starts at the community. So I will end my remarks today by congratulating the government and personally the Minister for his personal commitment as well on the disaster risk reduction agenda, and of course the people of Fiji for the solid progress and continued investment in early warning and early action. Fiji's commitment to advance this agenda is well recognised regionally and also globally. We also encourage you to continue to join forces across government as well as include the communities at every step of this process. Only then can we achieve early warning, early action for all. Vena ka vakalevu. Thank you.